hills of Los Angeles, I'm in most Hollywood nights. She goes to California, oh, California.
What you say about Los Angeles?
LA got the people saying,
You're listening to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. It's time for another episode of Corner of the Galaxy from the Box, the show that gets you behind the scenes of the LA Galaxy and into the minds of soccer reporters and MLS experts. Your hosts for the day are Corner of the Galaxy's Josh Guesman and LA Times soccer reporter Kevin Baxter. Let's start the show.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. I'm your host, Josh Guesman, another edition of Corner of the Galaxy from the Box, getting ready to come at you on a Monday, February 1st. Welcome to February, everybody. This is the month the league is supposed to start, so we're going to pretend that that's actually a thing, but we're certainly going to talk about MLSPA and where they are with MLS. Some nasty words being traded back and forth a little bit on this one. We're also going to talk to you about Cristian Pavon. We have some interesting stuff on Jonathan Dos Santos, and we have an update from a Galaxy source on where the Galaxy stand right now with regards to a whole bunch of different topics. So we're going to get to all that stuff. In order to help me do it is the panda himself, Mr. Kevin Baxter. Kev, how's it going, buddy?
Hey, 13 days until Valentine's Day.
Is that the countdown that you're counting for, or the 21 days until teams are supposed to report?
Well, no, I was just going to say February is the shortest month of the year, as you know, but it's going to seem like a nightmare. It's going to go on forever because of these labor negotiations. I just have a feeling February is going to feel like a very long month. I don't think this is going to get wrapped up anytime soon.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like it's going to get wrapped up anytime soon, at least not in my... I don't know. It's not even an expert opinion at this point. I mean, you could stick your thumb up and feel the wind blowing the direction it's blowing right now, and it doesn't feel like I did an interview with Jonathan Bond on Thursday night. If you haven't seen it, go back and watch that. I think it's worth it. About halfway into the show, so about 30 minutes in, you can watch that interview. You don't have to watch any of the rest of the stuff. Although Larry and I were pretty adorable, so maybe you want to do that. But I was talking to Jonathan Bond, and he was like, "Yeah." I asked him if it was nervous coming over and knowing that there was this labor negotiation going on, Kevin. And Jonathan Bond goes, "Yeah, somebody's gonna have to explain that to me. I don't even understand the whole thing yet right now." And I'm like, "Yeah." I go, "Don't worry." I go, "I think it's all going to work out." And of course, that was Thursday night, and Friday morning we get the release from MLS, which we're going to talk about, that sort of changed the tenor of all of that.
Well, I'm with Jonathan. This is inexplicable. There's really no way to explain it.
Yeah, we're going to try. We have to try to explain it. We're going to explain how it's inexplicable. Okay, we can do that.
It doesn't make sense, and what's really sad, and we'll talk about this in depth in a minute. But what's really sad is when they negotiated the collective bargaining agreement a year ago, it was signed in early February of, that's where we are now of 2020. There were months of negotiation that went into that collective bargaining agreement. It was groundbreaking. There were additional charter flights. There was changes on free agency. The owners got some of the things they want. It was one of those perfect labor negotiations where both sides compromised. And I talked to a lot of players who came out of that negotiation feeling like it had been a breakthrough, like they were finally being treated as equals by the league, and that there was this cooperative movement going forward where both the players and the league wanted to grow MLS. And that's all been thrown away. The league has threatened lockouts now twice in the last 7 months. It's not really even negotiating. It's more of a strong arm tactic, like do what we say or else. That's really not the way to build a movement going forward.
No, it's not. Let's get into it before we completely tear apart our show notes and all the flow that we have. But yeah, that's going to be a major part of what we're going to need to talk about. Yeah, well, I do. I'm the one who has the show notes, and then I talk about it, and then everybody is supposed to follow me. That rarely happens. I would just like to point out.
It's like improv on my side. It's like improv, right? I just sort of react to what you throw out.
That's I try to keep it simple, Kevin. That's for everybody. For me, whenever I show up to a podcast, I like it if I just have to show up and I don't have to do anything, thing. It's sort of like, hey, let me show up because this person is the host and they're supposed to tell me, and all I have to do is talk. That's my favorite thing. That's what I try to do for you every Monday, is just let you show up and talk.
And I do, and I show up, and sometimes it makes sense. Most of the time, it doesn't.
There we go. Perfect. All right, let's get to a little soccer that was actually played. Sebastian Lejet was in with the U.S. men's national team. Did get the start in their 7-0 rout over Trinidad and Tobago. Both of them beat them both 7-0. That's a good country joke right there. If I've ever heard one.
I always wondered about that. How come it's the U.S. they have to play Trinidad and Tobago? Those other guys get 2 countries.
Yeah, that's right. They may have needed 22 players out there in order to stop the U.S. men's national team as well.
But remember too, Trinidad hadn't played in 14 months as a national team, and their domestic league, because of this whole big imbroglio with FIFA, their domestic league hasn't played for a long time either. In fact, the Trinidadian team was so out of sorts and out of fitness that both teams agreed to a 2-minute break in the middle of each half to sort of allow the Trinidad team to catch their breath. So yeah, it wasn't really it wasn't really Germany and England in the World Cup final.
No, it wasn't, and that's okay. The U.S. men's national team has been playing some minnows here recently. As a matter of fact, they've scored more than 6 goals in their last 3 games: Panama, El Salvador, and now Trinidad and Tobago. 6-2, 6-0, 7-0. So the LA Galaxy, the U.S. men's national team, 13-0 in their last 2 games, or 13 goals to 0 goals allowed in their last 2 games, which was interesting. Here's the thing about Sebastian Lejet and why we wanted to sort of focus on it. He did play. He played the first half. He played well. He looked like he was a guy who was ready to sort of take up that central attacking midfielder role, Kevin, that we so often say, is that his role or is that not his role? It's one of those interesting things, but with the U.S. men's national team, he seems to, at least right now, against these minnows in the format that the U.S. men's national team is playing, has sort of looked like the guy who has upped his level a little bit.
Well, yeah, and Greg Berhalter talked about that a little bit after the game. Sebastian Lejet is the only player that was called up to all 4 games last year. They only played 4 games because of COVID in 2020, and then he's called up to this one. And in those 4 games last year, there were 2 domestic team games in 2020, and there were 2 games in Europe, and Sebastian Lejet was called up for all 4 of those again. So Greg Berhalter was asked, are there some players of this domestic pool that can play with the regular first team? This, as you said, this was not the regular first team. The majority of these players were guys that are going to be with the Olympic trials team, the U23 team that would go to the Olympics. Very few senior national players, or none of the guys that you would project as being on the regular first team roster, the Christian Pulisics and Weston McKennie's and those guys. But he talked a little bit about Sebastian Lejet and said that he very much thinks that Greg Berhalter very much thinks Sebastian Lejet is part of that European-based first team. He also talked about Paul Arriola, who now is a European-based player. We'll talk about that in a minute. And Walker Zimmerman, the center back, also part of that team. Those were basically the 3 guys that Berhalter singled out as guys that will compete for roster spots for World Cup qualifying. There's 8 World Cup qualifiers this fall, and Sebastian Lejet, as of right now, is in the picture for that. He did play very well. He was dangerous on a couple of chances, but it was really, kiddie night. A lot of guys getting their debuts, 3 guys with 2 goals, including Arriola.
Right.
So Sebastian Lejet did not find the score sheet, but as you said, did play a good game, was dangerous, consider the competition, but came away impressing the boss enough that he may wind up getting called at a training camp in March. The U.S. national team was supposed to have a couple of friendlies in Europe in March.
Yeah, again, something to watch as his confidence builds. And really, the LA Galaxy, with him on a targeted allocation money contract, a TAM level contract, needs Sebastian Lejet to be productive. He was productive last year. Nobody can deny that. He had one of his career years, really, whenever you look at the amount of goals he scored and just how he played. However, I would say that if you were watching those games, that a lot of that was sloppy. Now, the team was sloppy, too. But Sebastian Lejet a lot of times played in whatever position he wanted to play in and not necessarily the position that the LA Galaxy needed. I think a lot of that had to do with coaching. I think he was trying to find the rhythm, trying to find the places that he would fit into, Kevin, and it just, for whatever reason, hey, it worked well for him individually, but I never felt like he was a real integral part of that team. But I don't think that team was ever really an integral part of itself over the last year and a half. So
one of the Fox broadcasters last night on the national team broadcast said that Sebastian Lejet was the Galaxy's best player in 2020. I really don't think that's true. Obviously, Cristian Pavon was the best player, and the guy who played every minute and led the team in goals and assists. Sebastian Lejet, you could argue, might have been the second best player. And you're right. He was a guy that was sort of freelancing, trying to find his spot, see where he fit in, and plug some holes. And there was a lot of holes to plug. So, I did feel like he was roaming around the field lost for a good part of last season. And that's not his fault. Again, it's the coaching. Where am I supposed to be? What am I supposed to do? What do you want from me in this formation and this strategy, this playing style? I don't think that was ever clear. And I think Sebastian was trying to find his role. With Greg Berhalter, there is no guesswork. Everybody knows almost to the point of where are my feet supposed to be, not what part of the field am I supposed to be in. And I think Sebastian he's playing well. I think he's coachable. Is the point, I guess, is that tell me what to do, what you want from me, and let me go do it. And I think he's doing that now.
Yeah, so that was interesting. The other interesting part of this is another LA Galaxy player, Julian Araujo, was in this camp and got recalled to this camp. And I think we told you on Thursday night, I think we knew it on Thursday night, maybe we didn't, but that Julian Araujo did not dress for this game. He had some type of illness was the report out of that, Kevin. And it seems like, unfortunately for him, it came at the wrong time because, again, a chance to get his second cap, some more time with that U.S. men's national team, the senior side, and he isn't able to dress for the game. So Julian Araujo was selected on this team, was going to be able to play in this game, and I know the focus wasn't on Julian Araujo, it was on Jozy Altidore, who had an injury that was 2 weeks ago and very minor and probably not the reason he didn't play. Because there was some transfer rumors going around with Jozy Altidore, but Julian Araujo was on the other side of that, of a guy who was not able to dress and not able to play.
Yeah, and Araujo now 3 call-ups to the national team, at least 3. I count 3, and it's only had the 1 cap, and that's a little disappointing when you get called in that camp and you work out and you do the trainings for 2 or 3 weeks. And in the case of this camp, you really want to end it with an appearance in a game and show the coaching staff you learned what they were trying to teach you, and it's unfortunate that he didn't get to do that.
Yeah, so I still think he's in their, certainly in their sights, and they're looking at him for that U23 side, the Olympic qualifying side. If there's Olympics, which is still a question mark, but we're going to pretend right now. We're going to pretend that there's an MLS season and that preseason starts on February 22nd, and we'll pretend that there are Olympics coming up this summer in Tokyo, Kevin. I think that's the only way we can sort of go about it until they start canceling this stuff, right? All right, maybe
I think we might be surprised.
Yeah, we'll see. Like, we lost you there for a second, Kevin, but you're back now, so we're good.
I am.
Yes, you're still there. Not really. No. We were having a nice conversation without you, actually.
I bet.
Let's get to some fake reports and then maybe a little bit more real report, both on Cristian Pavon. So there was a rumor that came out early today that basically said, listen, this account had only like 3 tweets before it. I actually retweeted it at once and was like, oh, this is interesting. And then went back and looked a little bit and deleted that real quick and was like, no, we're not going to do that. But I wanted to point out the fake one, which was during this crazy last sort of transfer window brush. And by the way, the windows close at different times all around the country, all around the world. I don't even think MLS's window is open yet. I think it opens here in just a couple of days, if I remember correctly, and then it runs all the way through May. Now, that doesn't mean because all these teams are in off season, they can add people to their teams. They just can't officially register them until the windows open up. That's the idea behind this. But with all of the crazy European and specifically EPL and Scottish League, with those transfer windows closing today, if you watched any of the transfer coverage, it was a disappointing transfer season or transfer window across the world. Understand, this isn't a localized thing with COVID. The COVID across the world, really, the numbers are way down. The numbers of players are way down. All those things that we had been telling you were the case. This is still the case all around the world.
Well, we talked, I think, last week that the transfer market for 2020 was down 23.4% in Europe. Or maybe that's worldwide, 23.4%, so down a quarter. And spending year over year was down for the first time since 2010, was lower than the 2017 level. So, yeah, it is affecting everybody all over the world. Why? Because there's no money. The teams are not having fans come to their games. Revenue from TV broadcasting are down. Teams just don't have any money to spend. And so when they do spend, it's very, very, it's hyper focused on 1 or 2 players. It's not this clubs bringing in 10 and 12 guys for big contracts anymore. They're looking to fill 1 or 2 holes and hoping to get through this season and get on to the next one where maybe things will get back to normal. But yeah, because of that, Actually, I think it benefited MLS in some ways because some of the players that they could get here are useful players that probably come at a much cheaper price than if, say, Manchester City tried to get somebody from from Italy or from Germany. The price is going to be more reasonable coming from MLS.
Certainly, and there was a glut of those. But one of the reports that came out was that Cristian Pavon was close to being on the move to San Lorenzo, which is another Argentine club, and that it was going to be an 18-month loan deal. And you know, everybody sort of got spun up there for a couple minutes while we looked at it. Here's why. Immediately, there were some red flags after I retweeted it and sort of was like, hey, why would it be an 18-month loan deal? But Cristian Pavon's contract expires with Boca Juniors on June 30th, 2022, according to Transfer Market. So that 18-month loan deal would have taken them to the expiration of the contract date, which is interesting if you're a team like Boca Juniors trying to get the most out of this asset, Kevin. Yes, you can recall during the loan, but it's unlikely you're going to loan all the way through the period where you're trying to move the player, right? And we sort of talked a little bit about Jonathan Dos Santos on Thursday night and why the LA Galaxy may starting to want to move him because he has, you know, roughly 18 months left on a contract, or, you know, 20 or 24 months. So in the next, you know, year and a half is the time when you need to move him, because once it's 6 months out, there's no real benefit to moving a player then, because teams can just wait the 6 months in order to get the player for free. That's sort of the idea with some of these things. And so that sort of hit some red flags. And then if you go back and look and just sort of see the tweet history on this particular one, it was fake. So we won't say anything on that. We'll sort of, I just wanted everybody to know that I saw it. It's fake. We're going to move on to the more real rumor on Cristian Pavon.
You said you weren't going to say anything on that. You just said a lot on it.
Yeah. Yes, correct. I wanted to
and
clear
by the way,
the air.
when you started to say we're going to do some fake reports, I thought you'd been reading my stuff again, and then I'm glad to see it wasn't my stories.
No, this time it wasn't yours. Although there's
Okay.
plenty of fake reports around in the Galaxy universe right now. So maybe we'll stumble across one that has you in it. Here's what we're going to call the more real report on Cristian Pavon, which is funny. This was tweeted out by a radio and TV station that does cover Boca, and so it's a little bit more real whenever you look at this. Although I will say that things coming out of Argentina don't necessarily have to be based in fact whatsoever in order for any of this to go anywhere. But basically, the gist of this rumor was that Boca rejected in recent days an offer of $6 million from the LA Galaxy for Cristian Pavon. Riquelme did not accept it because it is very far from the original purchase option that was $20 million. The player will be operated on for the injury to his ankles. Apparently, he has 2 injured ankles, and we've sort of talked about this before, but 2 injured ankles, and they're discussing whether or not he needs to have surgery on them and whether or not that's going to happen. That seems to be a real thing. At least it's been real for the last couple of weeks as things have sort of progressed with Cristian Pavon. The $6 million, though, Kevin, I know in this it says it seems low. It seems low from what we also sort of thought, too, because we had heard reports of somewhere between $8 and $10 million being offered by the LA Galaxy for Cristian Pavon. We knew the $20 million. Listen, if they're going to cancel this, if they're not accepting this because it's not near the $20 million, then they better get used to Cristian Pavon being in their blue and gold there at Boca, because nobody's right now is going to approach that $20 million. And I would say that if they get half of that, right now, that they did a pretty good bit of work for Cristian Pavon in this market right now.
Well, as you said, the English transfer window just closed. Nobody was offering $20 million for him. Nobody was offering $10 million, or they would have taken it. We know that the price now from this report, we know the price now is $6 million. If they were getting more than that, he would be playing for Arsenal, or he'd be in Serie A or somewhere else now. So the point is, the market for Cristian Pavon seriously seems to have dried up. My understanding was the Galaxy were always willing to pay between $8 and $10 million. The story about the $6 million offer could very well be true and could fit in with all of this. If the Galaxy's best offer is going to be 8 or 10, you don't start there because it gives you no room to negotiate. The Galaxy very well could have offered $6 million and stuck at that figure for a couple of weeks, waiting to see what happened with the transfer market. Now that the transfer window is closed, maybe that $6 million has become the opening offer. I don't expect it to stay there. I believe the Galaxy understand that Cristian Pavon is going to cost them more than that. But I mean, that report could be true. That could be the opening offer, and we'll move from there. The Galaxy's not going to give their best offer as the first one. The other part of that makes me wonder, ankle thing. I just can't get beyond the fact that it seems to be some sort of negotiating ploy. I don't know what else it could be, but I don't understand how it works. If he gets his ankles cut on, that means that the Galaxy may not want him anymore if he's going to miss the beginning of the season, or they may want him at a discounted price, or maybe that's Boca saying he's going to stay here. But I don't understand it from Pavon's side, because whichever team he's trying to land with, not being able to play at the start of that agreement, whether it's a loan or whether it's a return to Boca, not being able to play at the start of that doesn't make him a very valuable guy, and it takes away a lot of his leverage. If he knew he had these ankle problems, he played his last game in November. Why is he in February now still talking about the possibility of having surgery? Don't you think you would have taken that up before Christmas, or at least very early in the new year? Maybe he couldn't because of negotiations. I don't know. I don't know how all that works. But it just seems strange that the ankle thing is coming up now when we're getting to the point where negotiations are beginning to heat up, and it's 2.5 months after he played his last game.
Yeah, there's something about the ankle thing that just doesn't sit right with me right now, Kevin. I don't know if it's that I don't believe it. It's just that maybe I don't believe the convenience of it. I certainly don't trust the sourcing on it. I mean, I'll tell you, most of the reports that come out of Argentina, I can't trust, and most of them have some real issues there. Let's. See, this is the prerogative of the host, Kevin, is that I can switch things up whenever I want to. And I told you that we weren't going to talk about this next subject next because I wanted to draw it out a little bit longer. But we're 21 minutes into the show now. And I feel like if we skipped over this particular part, that it wouldn't make any sense. So
I'm on the edge of my seat. What is this part?
Yes. So anyway, I was able to reach out to a Galaxy source, and as of Friday night, sort of gain some clarification on some issues around the LA Galaxy. So here is I wish we had some cool music or something like that I could play or do something like I could do a little bit of like dramatic stuff. I have reached out to the Galaxy source. And now see, it's too dramatic for me.
That sounds like Jaws. Yeah, it sounds like Jaws.
Yeah. So anyway, I reached out to the Galaxy source and was able to gain some clarification on some of these things that are going on with the LA Galaxy, and it's multi-part. So let's get to Cristian Pavon, because that's the part that we were just talking about. So I want to update you on it. The Galaxy are and have been in no rush to secure Cristian Pavon. There's simply no timetable for them right now that would have them under any sort of crunch. The fact that the UK window just closed, and we talked about this, Kevin, and this is a true and accurate representation, I believe, of where the Galaxy are at right now as well, is when that European / UK, / the other side of the world there, when that transfer window closed, that was a lot of leverage for the LA Galaxy to gain back, because everybody was always talking about Cristian Pavon and how he was going to get all these offers from everywhere, and $20 million was a bargain. So all the people that wanted to pay $20 million for Cristian Pavon right now, knowing, and people stated this as fact, that other teams were going to come after him, where were all those offers? He was certainly on the trade block. Everybody knew that. Arsenal could have come in, they were going to pay $40 million. So they could have got him for $15 million if they wanted to, Kevin. So you look at this on the Pavon side, and the Galaxy are just simply not in a rush to do it. Not only, and I need to also clarify, they want him. They still want Cristian Pavon, and there are questions about whether or not they should want him. Certainly with sexual assault allegations, now with maybe the surgery issues as well. And it's fairly clear that Cristian Pavon definitely wants to come back to the LA Galaxy as well. So at least that's how the LA Galaxy see it. But I've been told many, many times here, Kevin, that it needs to be at an affordable, at a reasonable price. It has to fit within their budget. It has to be something that's good for the LA Galaxy. And every time I talk to these people, it is all about, over and over again, the economic crisis that has been hit by football clubs because of COVID-19. There is not a conversation I have with the LA Galaxies talking about specific players that aren't about the crisis that's going on. So they're having to be very, very smart about where they spend their money. I would say that the LA Galaxy are feeling the financial crunch just as much as everybody else is across the world. And because of that,
I think more.
Yeah.
more. I mean, what does AEG, the parent company of the Galaxy, what do? They're an entertainment company. They have the LA Kings and stuff here that we know, but the O Arena in London, they put on shows, Coachella. None of those things are happening. That's been dark for 10 months now. So virtually no income to AEG for 10 months. And yes, they had some money stored away, obviously, but now is not a time when you go out and spend. And what you're saying about Pavon is really interesting, because I think the Galaxy, you're right, the Galaxy really want him, but I also think they're very comfortable with walking away rather than overpaying.
Yes, I think that's important, because there were people today sort of talking about why aren't the Galaxy just walking away from Cristian Pavon? There seems to be too many red flags, the whole deal. Well, right now the Galaxy are sort of sitting in that hover position, Kevin. They're sort of like, hey, and that's why maybe the $6 million deal makes sense. They said, you know what, listen, we're going to help you out. We'll give you $6 million for him, and we'll take him off your hands, and, we'll make this done. He's got problems. There's, these sexual assault allegations. He's got some problems with his ankles. You don't have to deal with that if you sell him right now to us for $6 million. Yes, it was $8 million or $10 million just a little while ago, but a little while ago you thought you were going to get $20 million for him. You're not going to get $20 million for him. So I think that the Galaxy are in that hover mode, which is we can take him or leave him. We're absolutely not going to be desperate. That's why I almost question whether or not there was an offer, Kevin, because it almost seems like that's not a desperate move, but like, you're sticking it to Boca. And I don't think the Galaxy even need to stick it to Boca. I think they just want Boca to realize that there is a reasonable price to be had, and they will pay that reasonable price, and everybody will move on. Unfortunately, I think Boca thinks that reasonable price is like $14 or $15 million. And the Galaxy think that reasonable price is right around $8 to $10 million. I'm guessing that's where it ends up. Here's the complete rub on that, though, to totally finish that thought. You said, Kevin, and rightfully so, that maybe the Galaxy could walk away from this. I'm being told that the Galaxy have many different people in mind, and it's not all the eggs in the Cristian Pavon basket. And you can say, oh, well, I'm sure, yeah, that's what they're going to say to people. I firmly believe the LA Galaxy are not sort of saying, well, it's Cristian Pavon or we die. That's just not it. One, it wouldn't be smart. And two, certainly you wouldn't see Greg Vanney coming into that situation and being put in that situation either. So for Cristian Pavon, go ahead.
Let's look at it just for a second from Boca's point of view and how badly they appear to have screwed this up. What if they had started negotiating with the Galaxy in September, when it looked like maybe things might be returning to normal by the start of the season in MLS, when Pavon was in that streak where he scored in 6 or 7 straight games, and we were talking about him as an MVP candidate before the sexual assault allegations, which again, allegations, we don't know much more beyond that, before the ankle issues. What if they had negotiated then? It would seem to me that they were in a much stronger position, and the Galaxy might have paid. It certainly would have paid more than $6 million. But Boca decided to string this thing out. Now the transfer window's closed. The Galaxy know that they're basically competing against themselves for this player. There's the sexual assault allegations, the ankle problems. He's not the player he was. He ended the season, I thought, in rather poor form. A lot of money have come, in my mind, a lot of money has come off the table. He's just not as valuable. I'm not saying he's not as good. I'm not saying he can't regain that form. I'm just saying the player we saw in September was not the player we saw in November, which is not the player that they're offering now. And I think that's a big reason why the price has dropped. And again, I think the Galaxy are, whether there's an option or not, I think the Galaxy in the current environment, economic environment, and where their roster is, this is not, in my mind, a roster that's going to compete for an MLS Cup. It's not a season that necessarily Cristian Pavon is going to make or break. I think the Galaxy are really comfortable walking away. They'd love to have him. He makes the team better. He's going to help bring some players along. He's a young enough player that he could be part of the future. But if it means destroying the franchise, they're just not going to do that.
So, that sort of puts a little bit of a bow on the Cristian Pavon rumors in terms of how I think the LA Galaxy are seeing it. And according to sources, that's sort of where they're sitting. So when you see people talking about Cristian Pavon, understand that, yes, the LA Galaxy are interested and they're going to be there. They're going to be watching, but they can also move on at any time too. And they have other other players in mind as well. Of course, I don't get like names, but they have other players. They know that they do. They know that there's other options there, and so they will continue to look and continue to search. Here's a fun one. Let's kill a rumor because it was already killed last week. So let's kill it dead completely. There is nothing and has never been anything to the Giovinco rumors. Sebastian Giovinco.
Although
yes.
they are looking for a central attacking midfielder. That's one of the people on their radar. It's just not.
It's just not Sebastian Giovinco, and it never has been Sebastian Giovinco. Sort of told specifically that he's a great talent, certainly a great player in Major League Soccer, but he's 34 years old and not a player the Galaxy are looking at. Okay, that's pretty simple, and that's pretty straightforward. Sebastian Giovinco is not coming to the LA Galaxy. It was nice because it was fun, because he knew Greg Vanney, because it is a central attacking midfielder role. It was a lot of those things. And by the way, the LA Galaxy. And talking to people, I was able to talk a little bit about a central attacking midfielder and ask that question. Is the cam coming? And that type of thing. I'll tell you, they're hopeful that they're going to be able to find one. I think it has to check some boxes for them, Kevin. And the boxes that were sort of discussed with me are a versatile attacking player that can play on the wing or even behind a striker. So not just somebody who can play in the middle, but somebody who can also play out on the wide, and also somebody who can play possibly as a second striker. Now, you can get that in, a central attacking midfielder and an offensive playmaker, a number 10, somebody who can shift into those different things. But that is what the LA Galaxy are looking for. And it's not just going to be a dedicated central attacking midfielder. This is going to be somebody who can plug into different places. And I think you have to have that, Kevin, when you look at Sebastian Lejet, who's probably also going to be asked to play in the central midfield and then probably bounce out to the wings as well.
If you sign
a
central attacking midfielder, if you sign what'd you call him, a Sam?
A Sam, Jam? Or a Cam.
Yeah, Cam. Could you use Cam or Jam to buy the Cam?
Yes, you could, absolutely. But the deal here
You're
is
just gonna let that go. That's the.
I am. Listen, I've had that joke. We've done that joke, I think, probably many times.
Oh, okay.
So I'm used to it. It's not that it's not funny. It's just I'm used to it. So, but I will say this as well. There were rumors out there that the LA Galaxy had the central attacking midfielder and that they were going to bring one in. I was told specifically the Galaxy are monitoring a few of those people on the list right now. So there is no one target that they have picked out that they're going to do. It is, with all the incoming transfers to the LA Galaxy right now, they're working hard on it. I know that. I've talked to people. They're busy. They're looking. They're scouting. You have to understand, though, with travel restrictions, it's incredibly difficult to scout these guys, to meet with these guys, to sort of do that. And Kevin, you and I have already always talked about how, if you're going to sign somebody, you kind of need to see them play in person, right? I mean, that's one of those things that's usually the golden rule is you go and you wait and you watch and you're going to see them play and you're like, yeah, that's the guy I want. That's not really a possibility right now. One, because of, the quarantine restrictions and just trying to go to different places. So the scouting has been a really big challenge, but for sure, players are coming. The LA Galaxy will make some moves. They have to, one, because they don't really have a starting team right now. And two is that they're planning on that. So there is stuff coming. I would expect to see signings. I know it's quiet. I think we're going to get an announcement. Kevin, you and I were talking, but we feel like there's going to be an announcement this week on the coaching staff that's coming out with Greg Vanney, and so you're going to see that.
Kevin Hartman is part of that staff.
Yep, and that came through with our interview with Jonathan Bond. He mentioned Kevin, and of course we were able to confirm that as well. So Kevin Hartman will be the goalkeeper coach. We were told that it'll probably be a lot of TFC West, Toronto FC West. So expect some of those names that you've seen with Toronto FC to also be coming over to the LA Galaxy as well. Greg Vanney trying to, I would imagine, keep a pretty intact coaching staff.
Yeah, we don't know what's going on with Dominic Kinnear. He apparently is signed. He'll be part of the franchise in some.
You say that.
You
say that. I don't agree with that. I could see him disappearing.
You're going to buy him out.
I don't know that they're going to buy him out, but they'll continue to pay him. He just won't be there. As of right now, there doesn't seem to be a spot for Dominic Kinnear on Greg Vanney's coaching staff.
I think he'd be a scout. I think he'd do some scouting. He could do some other things, work with maybe the academy guys. I just see Dominic, if generally the way these things work, and I don't know how his contract is, but generally the way these things work and why you you wound up seeing, say, for example, Cordonafo not take a job for a while after he was let go, is there is a non-compete clause, meaning we will pay you your contract. Jurgen Klinsmann had one of these with the national team. You will get if we fire you, you get paid until you take another job. When you take another job, that ends. So you have a situation where you essentially get a year's free vacation. I would assume Dominic Kinnear has something like that. If we hire your replacement, which they did, then you get your contract until it runs out, unless you get another job. And Dominic he's a gym rat, when it comes to soccer. And so I see him wanting to take the money. Obviously, everybody would, but wanting to be involved in some way. Dan Kennedy did that when the Galaxy retired him as a player. He took a front office job. Dominic Kinnear is at a much different level and deserves a much different role. But I don't know. Unless he had an offer to go somewhere as a coach and that other team met the contract demands he has with the Galaxy, he wouldn't lose any money. I could definitely see that as an option. I think he wants to be a coach again. But if they were saying, look, we'll give you the money, you can stay home or you can come in, I think Dominic's the kind of guy would want to come in. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong.
You could be right. I'm not seeing it this time. I think that Dominic might take a year off and go and sit with his feet up and get paid and be perfectly happy doing that. Or he's going to come in and, like you said, maybe he has a scouting or front office job or something like that. Maybe he gets to work with the academy. There's a whole bunch of things you could do with LA Galaxy 2 or anything else like that. So there's options there. I just, as of right now, it seems like, and I've been sort of tipped off on that Dominic Kinnear won't be part of this coaching staff. Who knows? I could be wrong. That could be a wrong thing. I don't want to be 100%
I don't think
certain.
I don't think he's going to be part of the coaching staff.
I don't think so either.
I mean, for one thing, and I'm not saying Greg Vanney is the kind of guy that looks over his shoulder. I don't think that at all. But when you have the third winningest coach in MLS history on your coaching staff, it's hard for people not to consider him the head coach in waiting. And the last thing you want when you're a new coach with a new staff is to have a guy that you think or that other people think are looking over your shoulder.
Yeah. The other part of this whole break, and that was the coaching announcement. I do think there's going to be player announcements. The other part of this sort of quiet time that we're in right now, Kevin, with not a lot of players coming in, with not a lot of announcements being made. I know Galaxy fans are restless and everything else. But I think it's important to understand what's happening during this quiet time. Greg Vanney is getting a chance to get acclimatized. He's getting a chance to go over all the players the LA Galaxy have had in mind and wanted to bring in. And Greg Vanney gets to go and he gets to scout these guys however he can, via video or talk to them on the phone or however it is. And so Vanney now gets to be involved in all these decisions that are being made. And I think up until this point, even with, Jonathan Bond, I think that was more a Dennis DeClosa than it was, Greg Vanney. And so what you're seeing now is Greg Vanney getting caught up, getting up to date on all this stuff and getting ready to make decisions. I also think that this quiet time is in direct relation to the current CBA negotiations, which we're going to talk about here in a second. And so there's a lot to go for this in terms of, just being patient. I think if anything, if you're going to say one word this entire offseason and into the preseason and into this league year, hopefully starting in April 3rd and 4th. If all of that goes well, you're going to have patience with all this stuff building all the way to that, because we're sort of in uncharted territories when it comes to COVID and the financial hit that all this has caused and the travel hit that all this has caused and just the scouting. It's a disruption to the entire system.
Well, and here's some more. I mean, first of all, the Galaxy roster, I think, is at 23 now. They got 7 to go, and it's not by any means finished. I think the back line looks pretty good. I think you have 2 goalkeepers that will compete. I think the midfield, a lot of holes left up front, a lot of holes left depth-wise, a lot of holes left. They have a lot of work to do to turn this roster into a team. I don't think it's a team right now. As you mentioned, I think you'd have a hard time putting together a decent starting lineup right now. So they have some work to do there. But when you're talking about the timing, when Greg Vanney came in, we had no idea when training camp would even start. I don't think we found that out right until last week. Right. They said February 22nd. So imagine you're Greg Vanney, you're coming in, or any coach, you're trying to build your team, you're working things out, you're trying to get some transfers. DC United just lost Paul Arriola, the Sounders just lost Jordan Morris. You're trying to build your team, but you don't even know building your team for when. When are you going to begin training camp? And then all of a sudden they say training camp starts in 3 weeks. Now all of a sudden you've gone from that dead period where you had no direction to, oh my God, we've only got 3 weeks to finish putting this team together, to get everyone into the city, quarantine so they could start camp on the first day. Now all of a sudden it's a rush. Then these labor negotiations screech to a halt, and now we're back up saying, with the ownership saying, we may lock players out. So it may not be February 22nd. It may not even be in February, but it may be. So you have to be ready.
Right.
And then the flip side to that is, let's say they do decide that they haven't reached the agreement and they do move to lock everybody out. But then on February 15th, there's an agreement reached, and MLS says, yeah, we're back to February 22nd. Now you're back into hurry up mode again. I mean, this is just a real unstable time. I'm not really sure whether this helps Greg Vanney or not, in the sense that, he's making it up as he goes along anyways. It may actually be a slightly better position than maybe a coach that's been around a long time and is having trouble adapting. Greg Vanney is in that adaptation mode right now. He may be a little more steeled to make this happen, but I'm just trying to put myself in the position of some of these coaches who, they don't have a target. They do have a target. The target's taken away. They're rushing to, they're not under any time constraints. Then they're rushing to get things finished. Then the rug's pulled out from under them. It's got to be a really difficult time.
Yeah, it's funny because I sort of see this uncertainty benefiting two groups of teams in Major League Soccer. I think it benefits the quote unquote bottom dwellers right now, and the LA Galaxy are one of those. In terms of, they don't have a set roster. It's not going to disrupt sort of the roster building that they've already tried, because really they're starting from the ground up again. So I think any moves they make and their ability to be patient through this, which means that maybe you don't have all of your guys in camp and ready to go by the time this thing actually starts, supposedly in April, and the transfer window closes in May. So you can still bring people in, and then the fact that this was a muted transfer window, and really the summer transfer window, hopefully on the as COVID sort of starts to die off a little bit and the money starts circulating and players start moving around, although there's the Euros and everything else that are sort of going in World Cup qualifiers, so maybe people don't move. There's a lot of uncertainty. The other thing that I think this helps is a team like Columbus, who has certainly been reinforcing their MLS, their team as MLS Cup defenders this year, have been putting some solid pieces into where you need to reload for our title defense on this. So I think that those are the two groups. If you're in the middle, I think it kind of gives you maybe some disadvantages there. You can't really build and replace pieces because pieces aren't really moving. And if you're, you just need a couple pieces to sort of make things happen. It's tough to sort of be patient with that. Whereas the LA Galaxy need to make some progress this year. But if they just barely make the playoffs, it was a pretty successful year in terms of turning things around from a year that was pretty dismal. So really interesting. We got to talk about it because we've been hinting at it so much. But with the MLS and MLSPA sort of in these negotiations, we said on Friday basically that MLS came out with a statement, and it was the super positive. I was all excited. I'm like, see, they're going to extend it and everything's going good, because they said Major League Soccer met with MLSPA and players yesterday to continue discussions on how to address the ongoing impact of COVID-19 pandemic. Although we remain far apart, and as soon as I read that, I'm like, really? Do you think you're that far apart? Because with the counteroffer coming in from the players, it was, hey, we don't want to extend it by 2 years. We want it 1 year, and then there's some tweaks to some free agency that we want as well. But basically, MLS says, even though we remain far apart, we will extend the 30-day negotiating period by 1 week to provide every opportunity to finalize an agreement. As part of the extension, MLS and the MLSPA are committed to a regular schedule of meetings over the coming days. That's really cool. And it sounded like everybody was saying kumbaya, even though then the league started to go ahead and throw some shade at things like talking about structural changes. And when they said that basically MLS's offer provided no structural changes, what they were talking about was the free agency change that the players were sort of requesting with that. They're saying, no, everything's going to remain the same. We just need to extend it out, a couple of years. And we've talked a lot about why they want to extend it with the World Cup and the negotiating power and all that. Here's the kicker, though. And this is buried basically in the last paragraph towards the bottom. It says, if we are unable to finalize a new CBA by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time on February 4th, the MLS Labor Committee has voted unanimously to authorize the league to terminate the CBA and institute a lockout. So, Kevin, all of that nice things that sort of were building in the front, and it started to turn a little bit in the middle. There was a little bit of shade being thrown back and forth, and you're sort of like, okay, what's the thing? Sort of falls off a cliff when it says, oh, by the way, we're already ready to lock you out. We don't care what these negotiations say. We don't care if we suddenly, come a lot closer. If it's not done, you're locked out. You've been put on notice in the middle of a pandemic. That's what we want to do.
Well, I just think the league has so mismanaged this thing. First of all, when they brought in the clause that had 30 days to work out a new CBA, they didn't have to do that. They could have talked. They didn't need that deadline of the 30 days, but they decided to use that force majeure clause to do this. I think the union was very unhappy with that. Like, just come talk to us. The MLS has, throughout these negotiations, have tried to use the public to bring the public over to their side, and it hasn't worked. They've tried to negotiate through the media and through the public by sending out tweets and other memorandum that a lot of it hasn't been true, or at least hasn't told both sides. When you hear that first of all, the players, they made $150 million, I believe, in concessions last year. They took pay cuts, they froze bonuses, they did a lot of things. They froze the increase in the salary cap. The players made a lot of concessions last year, and then they went and played a season in which almost 20% of the player pool were tested positive for COVID. So they literally did put their lives on the line to get the last season, and these are the players. So MLS comes back and they said, we want some more concessions. The players in their first counter offered $53 million in concessions. MLS said we need between $100 and $110 million more in addition to what they made last year. Players came back right down the middle, $53 million. We went to free agency. We'll make some other concessions. Among the concessions the players made, there's going to be a new broadcast contract that's going to come in place, I believe, in the 23 or 24 season. In any case, the original collective bargaining agreement said that the players would get 25% of the profit from that broadcast agreement. Now they've said, okay, we'll go to 12.5. Again, right down the middle. We're going to meet you right in the middle. They did want to increase free agency. They wanted it to go from currently it's players must be 24 years of age and have 5 years in the league. The players union says 23 years of age, 4 years in the league. Doesn't seem like a big deal. One thing that gets lost a little bit is the MLS offer. They want to extend the CBA 2 years, as you mentioned. The players want to do it 1 year because of the World Cup. Again, meeting them right in the middle there is where the players are. What does that mean? Well, when they extend that for each year they extend it, that means another year that the increase in the salary cap will not grow to the extent it's supposed to. In other words, they negotiated a stair step increase in that player pool that will be frozen. That's hundreds of thousands of dollars that the players leave on the table because that salary cap, the minimum salary, the maximum salary, all those things change under the current collective bargaining agreement. Ownership has asked the players to put that on hold for 2 years. Players said 1 year. So if it goes on hold for even for 1 year, the players give up thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. So that is a concession. That's a big deal. But the thing that I really don't like is the threat of the lockout. There's no need to do that unless you intend to lock the players out. They did that last June, forced the players. They gave 48 hours for the players to come back. They extended that another day. So 72 hours for the players to agree to a take it or leave it offer. The players did it and they got the season in. Now the ownership comes back again and says, once again, we are going to lock you out. I'm told from people at the Players Association that the players have been warned or had been warned all winter to prepare for a lockout, that they thought it was heading this way. I think the players are united. I think they felt like they really got hammered and the hardball tactics were too much last June. I think the players are unified. I don't think they're going to cave this time. And I think MLS showed their hand by mentioning the lockout, rather than just saying, hey, you guys met us halfway, we're going to continue these talks. This is all great. They put the lockout out there from the start. And then today on the MLS webpage, I don't know if you saw this, there was kind of like a primer about what's going on, what's happening, what are these talks doing. It was so one-sided. It was basically the benevolent MLS leadership would like you comrades to come, into the warm bosom of MLS and just take what we give you because we really care about your well-being. There was none of these none of the kind of nuanced things that we're talking about, that yes, the players have some demands too. None of that was recognized. It was all MLS knows best. Please trust us.
I mean, it goes without saying, and I think there's some good people who work over at MLSsoccer.com, and I think that they write good, they write well, they write stories, and they try to be as, unbiased as possible. But the owner of that website, MLSsoccer.com, is Major League Soccer, is the owners of Major League Soccer. Whenever they speculate on transfers that involve players that are basically under Major League Soccer contracts, it's a huge conflict of interest. It's like, it's like anybody's homepage, right? It's like going to LAGalaxy.com. If you're going to LAGalaxy.com, you understand who owns that and who writes that and where that sort of view is coming from. I think it was very obvious for MLSsoccer.com that article was, sort of preached upon down high. It wasn't even an article. It was like frequently asked questions. But just understand that you were going to get that from them. I wouldn't expect it any different. It's in the owner's best interest to put out as much PR in their favor as possible. I think it's interesting. The last sort of line in this statement is, given the ongoing pandemic, the league will continue to pay the health insurance premiums for players and their families in the event of a lockout, because they realized we're already looking like big giant a-holes, right? And so we better go ahead and do this. We better not just cross the line completely, which is, oh, by the way, if we lock you out, all of that medical that you were going to get from the league, that's gone too. So, I mean, that was the minimum they needed to do.
Well, part of the reason was when they threatened to lock the players out in last June, that was when the pandemic was really heating up. I mean, yes, I know it's a lot worse then, but if you think back to June, how everybody was really scared about what was going on, they threatened, when they announced the lockout, they said you will have no insurance. And that did not go over well, to lock players and their families out without insurance when a pandemic is heating up. So they give them credit, a little bit of credit there. They did learn from that. They're going to not lock them out without insurance. But the idea that they're even mentioning that, this is the third set of CBA talks that I've gone through with MLS. And the one a year ago was the first one of those three in which a lockout or a strike did not appear imminent. I mean, the negotiations went very smoothly. Now we're back into two sets of lockouts. The reason I mention all that is the three times I've been through this, MLS and its website have been silent. They never even acknowledged that labor talks were going on, or that there was a CBA being negotiated. You contrast that to the NBA and Major League Baseball that talk about it and let everybody know what's going on with the negotiations. MLS didn't even talk about it. In fact, the last labor negotiation 6 years ago, it was hours before kickoff on opening day before an agreement was reached. And the MLS website was talking about opening day and be there for the game, and here's what time it starts. There might not have been a game. People were flying to games out of town. It was really bad. And I mentioned that only to contrast it with now, where now MLS is out negotiating in public, telling everybody what their positions are. I think they've really overplayed their hand. And to me, it reeks of somebody who is panicking. They're really uncertain about what they're doing. They're not sure about their position. And it is so different from the way they've handled things in the past. I just don't believe that they're confident in what they're trying to accomplish here.
Yeah, it very well could be.
They do have. We need to say they do have some issues. Don Garber said they lost $1 billion that last year. That number is very squishy.
Yes.
We do know that the majority of their revenue comes from game day sales and sponsorships. We do know they lost hundreds of thousands of dollars. There's no question, and millions of dollars. But $1 billion, there's never been any reckoning for that. How did they come to that billion number? It appears to be lost revenue and potential increase in revenue. So it's a very squishy number. I wouldn't buy that number. Did they lose money? Yeah, they lost a lot. Are they going to lose more? Yes, because even Tony Fauci's saying we may not have fans in the stadiums until the end of the year, so they're going to continue to lose money. That is true. But again, the players played through the pandemic, and one of the things that MLS has said is, you know what, we're going to restore those pay cuts. We're going to pay everybody 100% of what they're supposed to get. Guess what? They're contractually obligated to do that. The players agreed to a pay cut last time. There's no agreement for that this time. So MLS is trying to make it look like they're the big guy because they're adhering to the contract that they signed. I mean, that's basically called obeying the law.
Yeah, but at the same time, once you go into the force majeure, then you're allowed to renegotiate the CBA. So then when you renegotiate the CBA, you could implement pay cuts again. I mean, I am certainly not on the ownership side here, mostly because, and I've said it many times, is they're saying we can't possibly handle the losses that are coming this year, which is why we had to put into effect the force majeure. But at the same time, we can handle the losses. We'll just take the plus on the back end. Really, they're saying they can handle the losses if they're willing to take the plus side on the last 2 years of the CBA. If you said, we can't handle the losses, we need concessions for this year, that's not what they're saying. They're saying they can cover it. They're saying they can survive this year, but that they want the plus side of them eating more, this season in that 2026 and 2027 season. So
I am clearly on the side of the union, and I think supporters are. We saw a number of the Independent Supporters Council came out wholeheartedly in favor of the players, other fan groups,
which they usually do. We should be said that right. That's usually the case, and so not a surprise.
Yeah, I mean, people cheer for the players, not. I mean, they owners. Cheer for the teams, but no one goes and says, they don't cheer for the owners. I mean, they may cheer for their team, but you know what I mean. It's the players. People come to see the players, not to see the uniform. And so I think most people are on the side of the players, but even saying, look, I'm not in the player's pocket. When you look at the negotiations, what I see repeatedly is the owner saying, here's what we want, and here's your position. And I see the players repeatedly coming in right in the middle. We'll meet you halfway. That's the start of a negotiation in my mind. Right. I want $100. You only going to give me $50. Let's talk at 75. That's watch Pawn Stars. That's how they do it all the time. Let's meet in the middle.
Right.
And rather than say, this is a good start of negotiations. Hey, players union, let's sit down and talk about this. What do they say? We're going to lock you out. We've unanimously approved the lockout. That's not a negotiation. That's a hostage situation.
And so we'll see how it plays out. Certainly, the fact that we've gone in so hard on the own, it means that this thing's probably going to get done on Tuesday. They're going to sign an agreement, and everybody's going to be happy, and you'll pay no attention.
They're signing it right now, and this pod is no good.
That's usually what happens.
It's good anyways.
It's the COG recording curse for sure. We're going to quickly go over because we got about 6-7 minutes to finish some stuff up, but. There is sort of this trend right now of Major League Soccer teams rightfully reducing the wage bill, I think, in loaning players out, in selling players outright. We've seen a bunch of loans go just recently. Brian Reynolds from FC Dallas technically is on loan now to FC Dallas because Roma basically are putting him or buying him this summer. So it's an interesting sort of back and forth that they have, but it looks like Brian Reynolds will be going to Roma. That's done. Orlando City has loaned out Daryl DK to championship side Barnsley. That's a short-term loan deal. Jordan Morris and Paul Areola both headed to Swansea, a loan through the rest of the season for both of them. And that's not the rest of the MLS season, the rest of the championship / EPL season, the European season. So basically in June is whenever that all goes. So you're seeing a bunch of these loans go through. It's interesting. I was sort of thinking, Kevin, is there one player or a couple players that you could think of on the Galaxy who might benefit from sort of this short-term loan that the Galaxy could move some money off the books for a half season, and not even really a half season, but until June?
Well, and a big part of that, when you look at a guy like Areola coming back off a serious injury, is to get them playing time. And I think maybe, as you mentioned in the lead up before we came on the air, talking about, maybe the idea of a lockout and a delayed season is really worrying a lot of owners and a lot of players and agents, and they want to get their players, into game action as soon as possible. They could have figured into all this. And when I look at the Galaxy, again, we'll go back to Julian Araujo, a guy that needs playing time to develop. He's really on a fast track now, but he sort of needs to continue that. Sebastian Lejet is playing really well. I don't know that he necessarily needs that. In fact, I was thinking earlier today, this little break might be good for him.
Right.
He played right through the end of the MLS season, then had a couple of, I think, 3 U.S. national team friendlies, 2 U.S. national team camps. He's probably due a little bit of a blow now. I definitely think Araujo was a guy that could definitely use some playing time, and a guy who could compete at a maybe second or third tier level right now in Europe. I don't know if he could be in a first tier team and get a lot of playing time, but certainly that's the one guy that leaps to my mind. Who were you thinking about?
I was thinking about Jonathan Dos Santos, and it'll sort of lead into our final thing as well, that Jonathan did an interview with the LA Times and Espanol. You can find it. It was tweeted out, I believe, by the LA Galaxy and the LA Times if you want to see that. It's in Spanish. I had a translator help me sort of take a look at this as well. But basically, the reason that I was thinking Jonathan Dos Santos on sort of, hey, maybe he goes down to Liga MX and plays a little bit. One is that we had talked a little bit about the LA Galaxy possibly moving Jonathan Dos Santos, and so getting him some exposure outside of MLS might increase his market value. He's coming off of an injury-riddled season, and so getting in there and trying to play some games and getting some regular minutes and getting some time to sort of test his body out and do that, away from the LA Galaxy might make sense. Maybe that's a reason why you don't move him, Kevin, is that you want him to stay 100% healthy and you don't want him to get injured by somebody else. But that his hernia surgery really did sort of bother him. He was talking about on this. He said, he admits that last year was one of his worst, and so maybe him going on loan for half the season is a way to sort of patch up that personality issue that maybe that fans think he has. That he goes and he works hard and then comes back to the LA Galaxy is ready and fit and ready to play. So I sort of say that. But you go into this interview and look at Jonathan Dos Santos. He talks about possibly even thinking about retiring, Kevin, just because he didn't know if he was ever going to be 100% again. You do know how that is whenever you're sick, like even if you just have a cold or something, or you have the flu or something that's sort of not fun, is you can't remember what it feels like to just feel normal. Like you're feeling every breath, you can feel your heartbeat is pounding in your head, all these things, and you're like, I just want to feel normal again. And it's sort of hard in that moment to gain the perspective of understanding, will you ever feel normal again? And I think that was sort of Jonathan Dos Santos here as well. So I don't know. For me, he just seems like he's a guy. We've talked about people who need to have big seasons this year in order to sort of repair some of the damage. Chicharito is obviously top of that list. I've said Gonzalez, Giancarlo Gonzalez needs a good season this year to repair sort of the negativity that's sort of around him. And for me, if I'm going to place money on a guy who's going to have a good year, for whatever reason, I'm going with Gonzalez. I think he's going to have a good season this year. I think he's too good to play as bad as he has been, and I think a lot of that was down to some coaching and some positions that he was put in. So there's that. But Jonathan Dos Santos is one of those guys for me, Kevin, that needs to come out and have an absolutely stellar year. And you're talking about really what could be the last full year of his contract. If it was indeed a true contract of 5 years, it would expire, this next summer. So not this upcoming summer in 2021, but it would expire in 22 of next summer.
But both those guys too are looking at big years, on the back end. It's September, October, November, 8 World Cup qualifiers, Jonathan Dos Santos for Mexico, people for Costa Rica, and then 2 more in January. And that's at the end of the MLS season. They don't get a break. They're going to go straight from, they're going to be, 25, 26 games in the MLS season. When those things start, it's going to be a heck of a year. They're going to obviously want to play really well for club, but for country as well. This is a World Cup qualifier.
Yeah, it is. So you're right. Maybe it's going to be too much. We've talked about schedule congestion before. I think guys like Julian Araujo, Sebastian Lejet, Jonathan Dos Santos, possibly Gonzalez, you could get into those schedule congestion issues. And so definitely a good point. I thought it was interesting. Jonathan Dos Santos in this interview as well was talking about Chicharito Hernandez and said basically last year was not what Chicharito expected of himself, and that Jonathan has talked to him in the past few days and he's focused. Talked about how he will help with the goals and defensively work. He's very motivated, Chicharito is, and discussed how Hernandez also went through things in life that sometimes are out of one's control and wishes him the best. Now, we've certainly talked about some personal issues, and there's been a lot of theories, and I don't want to theorize any more about that, but certainly Chicharito has been focused in this offseason, has at least been pressing the PR game real hard on his Instagram and all of his stories there. So it's safe to say, at least right now, he understands that last year was a total disappointment for him, and that he has to come back and prove something. So Jonathan Dos Santos says that it sort of looks like that was on the Instagram.
He was in the snow. He was in the snow today. I don't know where Chicharito was, but it was cold.
We have to talk about one thing before we get out of here, and it's a partial thing because I don't have answers on it, and it certainly is interesting. But we had Didi Traore, who had his option picked up in November by the LA Galaxy, is possibly on his way out with the LA Galaxy. We have a very cryptic sort of message, and I'll be honest, I don't follow Didi Traore on Instagram all the time, and so I can't tell you, but basically all the posts are gone. There's only one post. The post says, "No problem, they will regret it one day." And then if you go ahead and look in his bio, he is no longer says that he's with the LA Galaxy in that as well. And so there's chances here that Didi Traore is out. Now, the weird sort of, just for me, whenever I look at that, I say, okay, that doesn't make a lot of sense. And the reason it doesn't make a lot of sense to me, Kevin, is that a guy with a contract isn't easily let go. Like, you either have to transfer him, you have to trade him, you have to move him, you have to make things happen in order for you to sort of still abide by the contract, or you have to buy the contract out. But I doubt the LA Galaxy would spend their one-time sort of buyout on Didi Traore, or it's not enough money and they're going to buy it out and still take the cap hit, Kevin, with all that as well. But they had a chance to not pick up his option in November. So it's a really weird set of events. I reached out to the LA Galaxy. I haven't heard anything back, but I wanted to at least mention it right now that for whatever reason, we're sort of leaning in that direction that Didi Traore could no longer be with the LA Galaxy. And I just wanted to give you that heads up. I have nothing official. We will get official. So follow on Instagram or on Twitter. And hopefully we'll have an answer on that in the next, 24 hours or so, and we can sort of give you a better idea. But anyway, just very interesting. It would mean that the LA Galaxy, by the way, would now have 3 internationals out of 8 spots on there, and 22 of 30 roster spots if Didi Traore was moved off. So I don't know. That's sort of where we're at.
I'm looking at his Instagram page right now as we're talking at 9:00 on Monday night, and that post has been up 8 hours, and the comment section on that is now filled with a lot of people saying, "Gonna miss you, we'll miss you, make the front office regret." So whatever is going on, a lot of people are believing the story that he is on his way out of it's gone from the Galaxy. By the way, how many players from the U.S. are in Europe now?
54 whenever Brian Reynolds goes.
I knew you wanted to do that. That's why I sort of set you up for that one.
Yeah, no, I think it's that's crazy to me. That's crazy talk for me, Kevin. Like, I never thought I'd see that many Americans making a difference in Europe. And MLS has sort of become like the bargain buy. It's like not a lot of risk. We're not going to spend a ton of money, but we can get some quality out of players there, which again, we've sort of said MLS would become a selling league. I just didn't think it would happen, in 2020, 2021. I thought it would take a little bit longer. So anyway, that's sort of where everything sits right now with the LA Galaxy. I'll say that once again to Galaxy fans, Kevin, patience. Just let this come. This is going to happen. It's going to be a long off season. It feels like. I would say even if there's a lockout, it might be more ceremonial than anything else for me, Kevin, just because I sit there and say, you still have time. So even if if it does go to a lockout, on on Thursday night at 11:59, I'm not necessarily concerned for the season, at least not right off the bat. But it's just interesting times around Major League Soccer with COVID and everything else that's going on, and with the Galaxy trying to rebuild a brand new coach. I mean, it just makes your head spin. But certainly, it's not boring. Let's put it that way.
Well, here's another thing to throw into that. If MLS was not thinking about the possibility of a lockout, and perhaps it being a lengthy one, how come they haven't released the schedules yet?
Yeah, I mean, we normally have a schedule. Yeah, exactly. We usually understand that there's going to be a schedule coming out within this time frame, and we haven't seen that. Plus, but I mean, everything did slide back about a month. But you're right. We should be having it, and they're holding it because they don't know what's going on. So. Is what it is. Anything else you want to talk about, or can we get out of here?
No, you got your 54. I wanted to make sure you got that in. You were all excited about it earlier today. So
I mean, it's not like It's not like I came up with that stat or anything like that. I absolutely didn't. I stole it. Yeah, I did like it. All right. If you're looking for Mr. Kevin Baxter on Twitter, it's at KBaxter11. Head on over to latimes.com for all of Kevin's articles. Always some great stuff there, and make sure you subscribe to his newsletter as well, latimes.com. All right. If you're looking for me on Twitter, it's at Guesman, JGUESMAN, and of course at Galaxy Podcast. Head on over cornerofthegalaxy.com for all of our articles, all of our podcasts. Any of our information is right there, and we'll try to keep you up to date for the rest of this. All right. For Mr. Kevin the Panda Baxter, I'm Josh Pato Guesman, and you've been listening to Corner of the Galaxy from the Box on cornerofthegalaxy.com. Have a great one, everybody.
You've been listening to the Corner of the Galaxy podcast on cornerofthegalaxy.com. You can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Galaxy Podcast. And be sure to check out and subscribe to iTunes, Stitcher, and Facebook by searching for Corner of the Galaxy. Fans, we thank you for listening, and we ask that you be kind and courteous to your neighbors as you leave the podcast. We thank you for joining us and look forward to seeing you again. Until then, I'm Michael Araujo, and on behalf of the entire Corner of the Galaxy crew, goodbye, everybody.